This is Relationship Radio, an extension of Marriage Helper International, hosted by renowned marriage and relationship expert Dr. Joe Beam and CEO of Marriage Helper, Kimberly Beam Holmes. We answer your questions directly with research-based principles that you can implement immediately. Regardless of the situation, what we teach will not only make your relationships better, but will also help you to become the best version of yourself along the way. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell to turn on notifications. Turn up the volume and prepare to take notes as we begin this week's episode of Relationship Radio.
Hi everyone, today I have the pleasure of being joined with Annette. Hi Annette, how are you?
I'm doing well today, thank you.
And where are you joining us from today?
I live in Ontario, Canada, right along Lake Huron.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
And how is it over there? What's the weather like today?
Today, well, we had quite the stormy night last night, and it's a bit drizzly this morning and cool, but April's coming, so we're going to have more rain, right? And then the sunshine, right? So,
I'm here in England, so we probably have very similar weather right now.
yeah.
Rainy. Okay, so let's get started. I'd just like to hear from you to start with how you met your husband.
Oh, I met my husband actually at a junior farmers meeting, and I was part of one small group, and he was from another community, and we met at where all the communities came together, like an affiliate type meeting, and that's where I met him. And He was dating somebody else at the time, and we just got to know one another. And as you know, kids from the farm, you know, you're in your late teens, early 20s, you just kind of go out as a group. And my group kind of met up with his group and kind of joined together. And we all had, you know, great times together. Again, he was still dating somebody else. And then New Year's Eve, we were at just a party, New Year's Eve party, of course. And 12 o'clock came around, and he was with me and kissing me. And his girlfriend was standing somewhere else. And yes, so basically that ended that relationship. And then he and I started dating. We dated for we knew one another for 6 years and officially dated for about 4. And then we got married, and we got married in 1990. So when he left, we were married almost 30 years. A month away from 30 years, yeah.
And how was it at the beginning for you guys?
Oh, it was really good. What he always would say about me, he always liked the fact that what you see is what you get. I wasn't fake. I was, you know, I knew what I wanted and what I wanted to do, and I was very, very easygoing that way too. Um, at the time, I then also was changing careers, and he was a big part of that stability in changing careers. It was good, and we had he was a fantastic husband. He was a fantastic father, and his work required him to travel quite a bit. When we had our firstborn and our secondborn, he was traveling quite a bit overseas. He'd be gone for 2 or 3 weeks at a time, and then home for 2 weeks. And then, so when our third child was born, I asked him if he could ask his boss just to reduce the amount of travel, or travel continentally as opposed to internationally. He then talked to his boss. He made arrangements to change his job, and he was home a lot. We had a 4th child, and then the company he worked for wasn't seeing very good times here in Ontario, and because they were moving their facilities to the U.S., and so he switched jobs, and his travel began again, but it was all within Canada. At the time, collectively he was gone about 3 months of the year.
So things were good at the beginning.
Yeah, it was great at the beginning and all that, and it just in 2000 well, then when his travel started increasing a bit more and more, then in 2016 something changed. He started drinking very heavily. And our daughter had a serious concussion. His father had his first heart attack. And I remember asking him, several times, what's going on? Can I help you? Why are you drinking so much? Just a typical question, because a wife is very concerned. All of a sudden her husband's one way. And then, and looking back now, there was a gradual increase in alcohol, but in the fall of 2016, it was intense. It was just something like I've never seen before. And it was just very difficult living under the shroud of the addiction, trying to figure out what's going on. It was always he always gave me excuses. It was his work. It was his dad. His dad, had other issues, falling out of a tree with a chainsaw, and hip surgery, and second heart attack, and it and my husband's behavior became more and more aggressive towards me. In 2017, he started talking to me like an employee. And by 2019, he was talking to our kids like they were employees. Um, I asked him in 2017 if he was cheating, and he avoided to answer the question. He was dodging around with other comeback questions. Like, ask a question, he asks a question back, right? And he's like, "Oh, I know lots of women. Why would you say that?" And just stuff like that. It was just simple, yes or no. And so there was always something inside of me like, why is he not saying just no? Um, but then he would, give me beautiful cards, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you, and do really nice things, and and we go on holidays and all that. And then there would be these little moments of things that were just totally contrast to what he normally is. And this was his monster that slowly came out more and more and more. When his father passed away after the third heart attack, he actually landed in hospital with a broken femur, and then ended up having his third and final heart attack. Um, there was a complete deepening of this shroud that was over him, and the addiction became worse. He started calling me names, the same names that his dad used to call his mom when he was growing up. There was a lot of missing time. There was um, every week there was cash being withdrawn from the account, and this had been occurring already for a couple years already. But I never really paid attention until then. Even during COVID, when you couldn't go anywhere, you couldn't spend your money anywhere, he was still pulling cash out of the bank account. And when I would ask, he'd become very defensive, or he was buying stuff off Kijiji, and yet I would never see the stuff, um, and all that. So
It must have been really hard for you.
it was, because I kept asking what's wrong and all that, and there was never ever a conversation that it was us, ever. Never ever. It was always something else. His dad's estate. It's his work, because at that time, by then, his work was bought up by a different company. He didn't really care for the processes and how his job had changed. There again, he's still traveling across Canada. But by this time, by 2018, 2019, and into 2020, he was increasing the amount of time he was away, to the point that he was away 7 months of the year collectively. And so when I would say to him, "You're never home," because I never ever complained about his work or his work schedule ever with the kids growing up. And like I said, we had 4 kids, and um, he would get angry at me that I would complain that he's not home. And it's like, well, you're not. Um, you leave on a Sunday morning at 10, and you don't come back till Friday night at 10 or 9 o'clock at night. And on Saturdays, you're doing things or for other people, or visiting his sister, or just, because they had inherited his dad's farm. And so there was a lot of work there. And I was very understanding that there's a lot of work. I gave him a lot, I had no reason not to trust him. Absolutely no reason not to trust him.
At what point did you feel like, okay, enough is enough?
So in 2019, in September 2019 for our anniversary, it was just really, really weird. And he didn't even wish me a happy anniversary in the morning. He just had his, because it was a Sunday, he just had his bags for the week, when it's just said goodbye and left to go on his work trip. And I thought, okay, that's really weird, because I had an anniversary card for him. We had been out a night or two prior to that for dinner, and he never brought up our anniversary or anything like that. And I know at the time I'd be talking, and he'd always look at his phone as like he wasn't even paying attention to me. And I thought, okay, this is weird. So I would say stuff, and then I would say, do you agree? And he'd say yes. And what I said had nothing to do with anything to agree to. So I realized he wasn't even listening to me. When he returned home that week, I said something is really, really wrong, and would you consider counseling? It took about 2 weeks for him to get back to me on that one. Imagine that. But I see now probably why. And he said, let's see separate people first, and then come together in about 8 or 9 months, and so that we've worked on ourselves, and then we can work on our relationship. And I said, okay. So I went ahead. I found somebody to go to, and I just trusted he was doing the same. It was none of my business to ask. Um, and At Christmas, that same Christmas, because this was in the fall of 2019, at Christmas 2019, after we had dinner, Christmas Eve, and all, I'm sitting there with him and talking with him. And I said, I really, really want to work on our marriage and our relationship and get it back to where it was. And he took my hand, and he was stroking my hand, and he said to me, in the end, we all get what we deserve. And I says, what do you mean by that? And he just kept repeating that. And I couldn't understand what that meant. And I got frustrated with that, because he already had been consuming alcohol, and I just put it off as, okay, here's one of those moments again. But I just did the best I could with what I had. And um, with the tools that I learned from my counselor and all that, I could use them and work with them, and things actually looked like they were coming around in when COVID began in the spring and all that. That I actually extended out my appointments with my counselor to every 3 months as opposed to every 2 weeks. We just gradually, because things were working, and he was reacting in a much better way, and we were doing projects together, um, and we even planned a fall trip, just to go, just a day trip somewhere, because COVID was not great. This wasn't great for everybody, right? So, um, and that morning was July 30th in 2020. I made him coffee. He made me breakfast. We sat down. We talked about our day. We talked about doing something later in the afternoon. And mid-morning, I was in my garden, and he came out. He says, "Hey, I need to talk to you." And I says, "Oh, come look at my jungle out here." And he says, "No, I need to talk to you." So I go and I sit down in the patio, and his words were, "I have gone to see a lawyer to start paperwork on separation." And it was a complete blindside. Um, and I vomited. And I was in complete disbelief, and I was numb, and I sat there for the next 2 hours while he criticized me on things that happened 15 and 20 years ago. The fact that he had to change his job, which I referred to earlier, to a desk job, that he would never forgive me for that. And he was just picking at things, like he said, you have a habit that when we get in a disagreement, you're quiet. Sometimes you're quiet for the rest of the day, sometimes for a day or two after that. And then eventually things warm up and we get along well again. And then we get in a disagreement, and then you're quiet again. And he said he was sick and tired of that pattern. Um, and I'm thinking, okay, you do that too. That's kind of common. That's how I cope. I did attend the solo workshop, and I'm an S, and that's what an S does too, I believe. So they just need to,
Behavioral styles is something that you learned at
yes,
the
yeah,
workshop. Yeah. So that helped
just
you
need to
understand that.
process it, right? You just need to process it. And he just couldn't understand that.
So you felt like
And
when he shared that, Annette, do you feel like do you feel like you were getting to the truth of what the separation or the request for the separation was, or did you feel like it was
no,
just
Absolutely not. It was constant excuses because it was that there was a couple other little things that just didn't make sense. That when I went to go see a lawyer, the lawyer laughed at me. He says, "Those are the weakest reasons I have ever heard for somebody leaving their wife."
Well, and that's how it
Eh,
sounds here. It sounds like that wasn't the core of the real reason why you wanted the
yeah,
separation.
yeah.
And do you have in your mind what the real reason was?
When I was at the solo workshop on the second night, um, my youngest child, he's 22, called me crying. His dad had been to visit him that day and told him that he has been seeing somebody and wants to introduce them to him. Matter of fact, wants to introduce them to all my kids. So I suspect he's been having an affair the entire time and has just been covering it up. And so when I review back stuff that I took as he's depressed, he's trying to cope and all this. I now am second guessing that this may have been an affair, an emotional affair at first, and it just has been. There were other little things along the way that just didn't make sense. And I would question it, and he would slough it off or get angry at me. Now I'm thinking, yeah, it's because you got caught a couple times. The questions I was asking was, you were caught, and but like I said, I had no reason to not believe him, so I would think it would be something different, right? And
And I think a lot
so
of
I,
people can resonate with that, just this sense of confusion of not really knowing what the truth is. Um,
yeah,
but oftentimes we say, look for the missing money, the missing time, the inexcusable things.
yeah,
And probably now, like you say, you can look back and in hindsight can maybe see something that was right in front of you. So,
yeah.
so then you had this massive revelation. Obviously, was a very difficult time for you, um, and that's where you stand right now. Then, so you've both are going through the process of separating.
Yes, so he has filed separation papers with his lawyer, but it wasn't even, we haven't, he didn't even go through discovery. He left it for 20 months, and what his lawyer sent was just an offer. There's been no pre-work or anything, and so it's very confusing. I'm not sure what to do. It's just he won't talk to me. He just basically cherry picked what he wanted from the house and left. Um, and it's frustrating because we have a big home, we have a big lot. There's a lot of work to be done and maintenance and stuff like that. And he's just basically walked away from it. When I would ask him to come and help out with stuff, he would come, but he was always bitter and angry. And when I would talk to him on the phone about it, he was good with it, and then he'd show up and he was bitter and angry. So now I'm wondering, okay, if he, did he tell his affair partner that he was coming here, and his affair partner, put the gears on him, and so he was angry at that, and so it was coming out at me. I don't know. So we can't even talk about our kids. We still have two in university, two are married. He won't even openly talk about them. Everything has to be through text or email, and it's just very, very, very difficult to converse with him. When he told my boys that, it was a shock to my boys too. They had no clue that their dad was having an affair. He's claiming it started in 2021, but you can't be a hot item starting in 2021 without anything prior to that leading up to it, right? So um, he did talk about, there was two women he did talk about um, during the time prior to 2020. One was from his work, and one was somebody he would meet at the airport. So I don't know if that was telegraphing or why he would tell me about these women, because he never ever had talked about specific women. He would talk about people in general that he met here and there, but never repeatedly about the same two people. So it's just, I don't know where reality stopped and where the pretend, the deceit began. where the lies began. I don't know when that occurred.
So, Annette, at some point during this journey, you found out about Marriage Helper.
Yes.
How did you find out about us?
So yes, so in fall of 2020, I was just Googling through stuff about, because I had attempted the week after this all occurred, I asked him about, like, can we at least go see a counselor and talk? And he would kept saying, it's too late. That time for that is past. And I'm going, what do you mean? You just told me a week ago, the time for that is past. And then I asked him, I said, so did you put me through a test? And did you change the goalpost every time I met them, like met the criteria, or what, right? Because I couldn't see what I was doing wrong for him to leave with such weak reasons, right? Um, I'm the one that was going for therapy and trying to change be and my therapist said it was never about behavior, it was more about how I felt about myself. That's where my issue was. It was how I felt about myself, never about my behavior. Um, but I can see a couple things that I probably reacted incorrectly to, that didn't help the situation. And I'm not saying that I'm not to blame. I just would like to know what I did wrong in his eyes so that I can at least, um, not do repeat the same things. But yes, anyway, so it's just, and so Marriage Helper, I found some videos on that. And then there was also some information on another course held by somebody else, which I enrolled with that January in 2021. And I did that one. That one was over the phone and it was good information, but it didn't really help me where I was at. But I kept watching the Marriage Helper videos and then I learned about the podcast for It Starts with Attraction. So I started listening to that. And then in October of 2021, I decided, I am going to stand for my marriage. And I enrolled in the Smart Contact. No, not Smart Contact, Save My Marriage course in November. That's when I did that. At that time in November, I also enrolled in the solo workshop that took part just a couple weeks ago, beginning of March.
So, how was the solo workshop? We have
God,
a lot of people
it
sign
was
up for it. So, tell us about it.
it was great. It was exactly what I needed. It was, and despite hearing the news on the Saturday night about my husband, we had just finished limerence the whole afternoon about limerence, and so that gave me a little bit of grounding as to what I believe my husband is in. It it I spoke with Dr. Beam the next day with everybody and I said, I don't know what to do. I said, I don't know if I should confront him. And he's just basically said, well, what is it that you want out of it? If you want to confront him, what is it that you want, or what do you think that he would want? And all. So um, I haven't let him know that I know, because he told my boys that he has no intention of telling me, which I find is a bit weird as well. I don't understand why somebody wouldn't own up to it, but that's his thing and he chooses to do that. Yeah, so the course was fantastic. It was a little harder for me on the Sunday because with all the emotions running in, but by the end of the day, I think I was back in it again, because there's everybody is in a similar situation, and it was really good. It it I repeated this several times. There are so many aspects of that course that really make you look at yourself and become humble, and and make you see where you may have behaved out of selfishness and where humility needs to come into play. Um, I can't say enough good things about it. I wish my husband was there or would take this course. I haven't even offered any of this to him yet. But it the support is good too. I like the weekly support that comes out through email as well. Even though I can't necessarily put all those aspects towards my relationship with my husband, I can read them and I can do the best I can with what I have. So right now, I did purchase the Smart Contact toolkit since then, and I've gone through that as well. And just in general, what the Marriage Helper program does, and I wish I would have signed up a year prior, because we are in a state where we have to make some very, very difficult decisions that affect the rest of our life, and we're not necessarily in the mental state capable of doing it thoroughly. And what Marriage Helper programs do, and the videos and the toolkits, is it helps us, as they say, like, there's always hope, but it helps us in certain aspects of our struggle to stay on track for what we believe. You know, we're standing because we believe in our marriage, and we believe that, you know, um, this is a good thing, that, and I can go on with a bunch of other things, of emotions of being in love and all that kind of stuff, but and also what it means to be married. But everybody has their own reasons. But it helps us, just to stay on track, because there's so much other junk going on, and then the outside people trying to tell us that, I should sell my house, I should move into an apartment, I should do this, I should do that, and it's like, no. And then when I don't, and I tell them, that I don't want to talk about it, they get angry. And so I've had to pass on some of those folks as well, because they're not good for me at this time.
Right. And I think that doesn't come from a place of, negativity. It comes from a place of love, and they don't want to see you hurting. And so their advice
Yeah.
can often come, they want to see you
Yeah.
out of that situation. But I think one of the things we say at Marriage Helper is try and limit the people that you're getting advice from in this situation, to people who really know you, know your situation, and can talk into that.
Yeah.
So Annette, it sounds like you've been through a lot over the last few years.
I have. I have. He is a good man, and like I said, and when he was, when he was drinking, you could see, like, there was his regular personality, then there was the happy drunk, and then you could see this monster just come out, and which personality that just was not nice. If I would say the word no, that personality would come out. It'd be anything, Hey, would you like this? No, not really. Then that personality would come out. It's like he was reacting to that. Now he didn't have the greatest, as far as a childhood goes. There was a lot of trauma there, and the only thing I can think of is that he's trying to deal with that and doesn't realize that his uh, his body is trying to deal with that. It's just a way of telling himself that, he's okay, and I just wish he would get the help and come home.
Yeah, and we wish that for you too, Annette. How are you coping on a day-to-day basis with all that you've been through?
I meditate. I go for walks with my dog. I try to do the things that make me feel happy. I maintain every 2 weeks. I still go see my therapist. I still maintain going to see. I go to an osteopath as well every 2 to 3 weeks as well, just to keep my body healthy. And so those things I do maintain, but it's really hard because I'm alone in this house. Like I said, two of my kids are married. My daughter doesn't speak with me. She and her father just shadow one another. I'm ghosted by her. It's not pretty at all. So,
Well, Annette, as we wrap this up, if there's somebody in a similar position as you, who's just found out, or let's say if there's someone in the position of you were a few years back when you just had had a sneaking suspicion that something was happening, and you just found out that your husband was having an affair, what advice would you give to them?
whew. See, at the time, you're just totally head over heels for your husband, and you trust everything they say. It's just, um, but looking back now, just I learned to ask open-ended questions, probably, so that I don't come across as defensive. Um, and get him to communicate in a way that he feels safe to communicate. I don't understand why he wouldn't have communicated with me. Maybe he was ashamed. I don't know. Maybe he was resisting. I don't know. I can only speculate. But as far as just finding out that, that your husband has been having an affair the whole time, you just have to find a way to keep it together, and really meditate on what you want, what makes you happy, um, and don't listen to your family, don't listen to your friends, unless you want to just totally um, leave the situation. But if you feel that your marriage is important, then find the people that can help you understand and move forward on that path and in that direction. That's about the only thing I can say. Like I said, the courses and programs that you guys have really help to keep me on track as far as what I believe in and what I want to stand for, what I choose to stand for, because there's so much other chaos going on. So I've been a stay-at-home mom since 1992, so it's 30 years, and I'm looking at now. I'm 56 years old, and basically I have to go get a job, and it would be a minimum paying job because I don't qualify for second career through our government programs here. So there's a lot of things that I don't qualify for because I was a stay-at-home mom for so many years, or go back to school. And it's just coming up with what kind of career will I now want to embark on that I can do when I'm 70 or 75, because that's what I'm looking at is I need to be able to support myself because just the way things are on this end.
Well, Annette, I appreciate your time today and hearing from you a bit about your story. And on behalf of everyone at Marriage Help, I wish you all the best and hope to hear from you in the future.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of Relationship Radio. Please refer to the notes in the description to learn more about any resources mentioned in this episode. Please visit our website at marriagehelper.com for more information about our online courses, marriage workshops, and coaching. We exist to help save marriages and strengthen families. We look forward to interacting with you on the next episode of Relationship Radio.